Good evening, everyone, and thanks for coming for today's session. Today's session, we are going to talk about Anthem's Health OS platform and specifically about interoperability because as the healthcare organization are moving more towards digital transformation, interoperability plays a major role. So without ado, let's get started. The primary topic we are going to cover today is about introducing about AWS for Health and what are the current business opportunity as well as challenges today exist in the market, specifically on the healthcare. And also, when we say challenges, data plays a major role, and we want to see how data has become a key asset to the organization to make it more successful. And also, we are going to talk about, in general, about how Anthem built their Health OS platform. And we have Tafiq with me from Anthem. He's going to talk more about the Health OS platform in general. And then we'll cover about the current and future architecture, how we built the Health OS platform using AWS services, followed by Health Lake, which is one of our key services. We are going to talk about how it enables the interoperability. So healthcare organization today moving more and more towards digital transformation, basically to enable improving their collaboration with a lot of their partners and ecosystem, as well as making a lot of data-driven decision because its data becomes a key asset. So making a right decision using this data plays a vital role, and also to develop faster development of new therapeutics to support in the healthcare industry. But to identify the right cloud technology becoming a challenge, and to help customer accelerate the cloud journey, in this summer, we introduced AWS for Health. It's a purpose-built services. It is built basically with the partners, support with the partners ecosystem. The primary goal of this AWS for Health is to increase the pace of innovation for our customer and also unlock the potential of health data because there is so much information available in the health data. We wanted to see that there is a service which helps them to unlock that potential. Also to develop as well as streamline more like a streamlined approach for patient-centric and member-centric data. So what is AWS for Health? AWS for Health aligns purpose-built services and hundreds of AWS partner ecosystem across 6 solution areas within the healthcare industry. So customer can now choose the right cloud technology to accelerate their digital transformation and to enable faster development of their business initiative. So that's the primary goal. With the solution area within the solution area of clinical information system, so we offer a purpose-built services and solution that will allow our customers to operate core clinical information in the cloud. In this session, we are going to hear from our healthcare leader, Anthem, and I have Tafiq Bajali here with me on their journey for reimagining how they leverage the data. Again, data is a key asset, how they leverage the data to improve their member experience. Without ado, I have Tafiq Bajali with me. He's the head of engineering, and he'll introduce.
Thanks, Srinath. All right, thanks everybody for coming to our session. As Srinath said, my name is Tafiq Bajali, and I lead the data and data services team building our Anthem's Health OS platform. So let me advance the slide here. One more. All right, cool. So before we dig in, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Anthem. We're a very large health insurance company. We license the Blue Cross and Blue Cross Blue Shield brand in a lot of the states that you see on the map. We provide insurance for about 44 million members, and that's across plans like Medicare, Medicaid, and commercial. We've also been investing heavily in our digital transformation as a company over the past 5 years. And with that, we have petabytes of data and over 100 million lives that exist in our platform. So now let's talk about why a team like ours exists at Anthem and how it can differentiate us as a company to our consumers. So first thing, we want to use this data to figure out how to improve member experience. So constantly iterate and use data and analytics to figure out how we can optimize the experience for members. We also want to increase quality and focus on reducing the cost of care. So we know that Data is a big enabler of that. Then we want to make sure that we can enable AI ML on this data stack or in our platform and against this data so that we can make insights-driven decisions. And then we want to make sure that we scale. So as we get more and more membership, as we get more and more data, and as we collect more and more data types, we want to make sure that whatever we put in place to achieve these things is scalable. And then last but not least, we want to make sure that we're constantly building digital-first solutions and moving towards digital-first care delivery. Next slide. Whoops. All right, so let's zoom in on the data realities that exist in our environment. So the data we need for the job that I described earlier exists in thousands of different systems. Systems, repositories, whatever you want to call it. And the data exists in different formats, different standards, et cetera. And it's not always the best data quality, right? So there's variety in the quality of the data as it exists. In some places it's better than in others. And then there's a lot of insights that we need to essentially uncover using AI and ML. Beyond that, we want to be able to take those insights and bidirectionally integrate them back, either into the provider's workflow or into the care manager workflow or into the various digital applications that are used for care delivery. And so that's really what we're trying to do. And so this brings us to why we're building a platform called HealthOS, right? So in a nutshell, HealthOS is our digital platform. It's going to enable native bidirectional interoperability with provider systems. So think of electronic health record systems like Epic, eClinicalWorks, Athena, et cetera. Not to be mistaken with the AWS Athena services, right? It's there to simplify AI ML, right? So make it a lot easier for us to be able to make sense of this data and quickly access the features. And then we're currently in production with this as an enabler for our value-based contracting. So as we pivot from fee-for-service to value-based contracts, we want to use these enablers and technical tools and capabilities and extend them to providers to help them move towards value-based care arrangements. So let's zoom in a little bit more on HealthOS and the components that make it up. So first, it's really about platform services that simplify clinical data acquisition. So as we talked about earlier, there's a lot of data that exists out there, and we want to make it really, really easy for us to acquire clinical data. We also want to embrace an industry standard FHIR format so that we don't have a lot of, we'll call it domain knowledge required or Anthem-specific knowledge required for folks to come in and start building applications or AI models. We want to use platform or build platform services that simplify application development. So it's not about simplifying the data and the consumption of the data for AI ML, but it's also about simplifying how we actually build apps. And then beyond that, we want extensibility of the platform. So we want to build a platform that's extensible to third parties. We want to build a platform that simplifies the interoperability internally within other core health plan or Anthem systems. And then we talked about this earlier, interfaces for extending insights and invoking functionality on provider-based systems, so EMR, EHR systems, et cetera. And then, with all the platform services and tools and whatnot, there's an element of a catalog and docs and various other things that make the platform more mature and robust and easy for developers. So it's just as much centered towards enabling business as it is to simplify application development. I'll go to this next slide and I'll briefly cover this block diagram. So this is the block diagram of the architecture as it exists today. So this is conceptual. Across the bottom, we've got all the different EMR systems or EHR systems, whether it's Epic, eClinicalWorks, Athena, Cerner, et cetera. So the first thing we do is acquire this clinical data, and then we member match it. We're tagging it to figure out where it came from, the various facilities or the providers that it came from. There's an element of normalizing the data or making sure that value sets from source A equal value sets from source B, and there's unification there. And then what we do is we project this data, or we run it through our fire hose, which converts it into the FHIR standard. So from there, this is kind of the base data model for these applications or AI models that are federated that sit on top of that. And those are insights, or those federated models or insights will look like care gaps or suspect risk conditions that we want to send back to the providers for either validation or to act on, as well as we might essentially calculate or inform the need to trigger functionality on the provider's side, and all that will traverse through the various layers and out through the abstraction layer that facilitates interoperability with the various electronic health record systems. So we'll dig into a lot more of the physical implementation. So that was the conceptual representation of the platform. As far as Anthem, we've been with AWS or working on our AWS journey since 2017. We have over 85 services enabled now on AWS, with HealthLake being the most recent one. Beyond that, we're targeting 400 applications to be in production in the next couple of years, or 18 months to be a little bit more specific. And then I'll quickly skim over this. This is why we picked AWS for this go-around. So we wanted, as I said earlier, a scalable solution, elasticity, and optimized, essentially, costs, as well as performance when it comes to the various services that are enabled or that we enable the architecture that we just looked at. Obviously, security, native AI ML capabilities, and then all the other services. And with that, I'll turn it back to Srinath to talk a little bit more about the specific implementation.
Thanks, Taufeeq. So thanks, Taufeeq, again. We recognize the need of a very simplified platform, meaning simplified architecture, to build that capability what Anthem is looking in AWS. So what we did was we wanted to build a platform, like I said, it's simplified architecture that supports, operates, and exchange of data in a standardized, industry standardized format, FHIR, which is the Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resource. So that way, the data can be exchanged with, within the organization, as well as within a lot of third-party companies. When I say companies, it could be provider, patient information. So all this data exchange, we wanted to make it more standardized format. That's where FHIR comes into picture. So we designed this solution in mind. We started with building, at the time when we started the HealthOS platform, AWS HealthLake was not available. So we started with a very simplified architecture where we'll bring all the on-premises data with various silos and various data formats. We bring that into our centralized S3 bucket. That's where we drop that in a raw format. As well as we have a lot of data which exists in the existing data lake, which is built, enterprise data lake in Anthem, which is built on AWS platform, primarily using S3, EMR for processing, Glue, Athena. We use multiple services to build that enterprise data lake, along with a lot of data which already also exists in Snowflake, which is a data warehousing solution within Anthem, which runs on AWS. So we bring all this data, and then first thing we do is we convert that everything into a standardized format, Parquet format. From there, we use EMR to reprocess all this data, applying business logic, as well as converting them into industry standard FHIR format. So, and since we have all the data in a simplified FHIR format, one single standardized format, FHIR format, Anthem is able to build a lot of data services on top of that FHIR format so that they can exchange the data in a more standardized format with a lot of providers. And these services are basically deployed using our Kubernetes services, which is our orchestration platform. With the introduction of HealthLake, we decided to make a change to our architecture, and then HealthLake also takes a lot of heavy lifting, which we did in the past with a lot of manual processing. So with the introduction of HealthLake, which basically it provides a lot of unified, it's a unified platform. basically for hosting Health Lake data in a standardized FHIR format. And we even simplified this architecture as many of the heavy lifting, which, like I said, we did in the past, it's all taken care by Health Lake. Health Lake. Our claim processing today still runs on existing EMR-based Health Lake, meaning AWS platform. But all the clinical data processing will be done using the new Health Lake ETL pipeline. So all Amazon Health Lake as a service, it will be like it reduces the code footprint. It reduces a lot of code footprint, and also maintenance becomes very simplified. That's the benefit which we see that with this new design and architecture. By integrating with Health Lake on Health OS platform, with the Health OS platform, we were able to improve our data pipeline from 3 to 4 days from our previous design to a couple of hours. That's a great improvement we have seen. Also, we today generate 44 million FHIR bundles, and meaning we build a FHIR bundle every day, 44 million FHIR bundles every day, with millions of patients' records get updated daily. So with this, it helps to connect 10 to hundreds of our healthcare providers with healthcare providers, because we all now speak the same language of healthcare. So quick introduction about Health Lake. Health Lake is a HIPAA-eligible service that enables healthcare providers, health insurance companies, and pharmaceutical companies to basically securely store the data and then transform, query, and analyze the health information at like really petabyte scale. So it allows healthcare and health life science companies to import the data and then basically import the data from your on-prem, whether the data is in structured or unstructured, comes from various volume and various formats. You can bring all those data, and then we transform that data using machine learning models within the Health Lake, so that you can easy to query and search the data. And then finally, you can analyze the data and you can ask questions. Basically, it gives you a lot of, you basically uncover a lot of new insights from the data. So Health Lake supports interoperability standards like FHIR format, which I talked about, fast healthcare interoperability resource standard format, which is the HL7 industry format. Interoperability, what it does is it basically ensures that the data is shared in a consistent and compatible format. That's the primary purpose. And then FHIR basically enables the exchange of data between organizations. So this ensures that everybody speaks in the same language of healthcare. Amazon Health Lake also supports FHIR query operations of create, update, and delete. They follow the standard FHIR compliant specifications, basically. Health Lake basically makes it easy to migrate your on-premises data, whether it's in FHIR format or any other format, into a S3 bucket, and then it automatically indexes all your data in the lake. And then you can create a complete view of that data information there. It's very easy to extract a lot of meaning because it has a built-in natural language processing NLP algorithms, which basically integrates with ICD-10, if you're familiar with ICD-10 and RxNorm, which are the industry ontologies. So it uses that NLP model and then extracts the meaning. A lot of time, doctors puts notes and prescribe some information. We take all those plain text and plain image data, and then using the NLP model, it automatically extracts all the medical information from the data. And then once the data is indexed and analyzed, it's easy to analyze and make a lot of prediction. Customer can also build their own ML model on top of it using the SageMaker, and then run a lot of query and analyze the data. And we also, you can create a lot of dashboarding view on top of the structured data within the Health Lake. So customers, like I said, customers can use Amazon QuickSight, which is our dashboarding BI reporting tool, which you can use to build a lot of dashboarding report for your customers and make it more personalized view. And then, like I said, developers can bring their, use the existing ML model, or they can build their own custom ML model to build a lot of predictions, and then they can predict like sepsis in any hospital ICU and other kind of models on top of it. And then customers can easily share the data with patients as well as the providers and other third-party industries in a more secured and compliant way. That brings end of this session, and we are going to meet outside for any questions. We're happy to. Thank you again.
Yeah, I think we might be able to do a couple here, and then, I don't know if
Yeah.
we have time or,
We have time.
yeah, cool.
Any question?
There's one couple here. Yeah, go ahead. Start there.
Is there a mic?
So good question. So, the reference to Snowflake is, so think of, we wanted a single data store that essentially would enable multiple workloads, right? So the trade-off there is you integrate the data once and keep it in sync, and then enable multiple workloads off of it, instead of creating multiple fit-for-purpose data stores with, and then enabling the various workloads that need to use that exact same data. So that's just kind of so it just simplifies the amount of code required to power the variety of workloads that we need. Anything you want to add there?
No, you got the point.
Okay,
It basically, all the data, once it gets into the Health Lake, it becomes a FHIR standard. So all the normalized and meaning unstructured and structured data, they all become very useful for in consuming as well as running a machine learning model, as well as, like I said, QuickSight. You can run a lot of these dashboard on the structured data, which is available within the lake.
Yep. I think we got some questions over there. Sure. Yeah, so in the platform, the block diagram so if you think of like the responsibilities, we know that there's a variety of EHRs out there. And in our case at Anthem, we're partnering with Epic, we're partnering with athenahealth, et cetera. And that gives us essentially a future-proof single point of technology integration with those EHRs. And then we build an abstraction layer on top of that. And that abstraction layer is part of what we call platform services that take care of routing. So if in platform you're building an app and the responsibility for that app is to compute an insight, you shouldn't really care about where that insight's going to go. It's an insight specific to a member, but who's that member's provider and what's their corresponding EHR system and how do we deliver it to them, right? So that's kind of where. And so if you're a developer on our HealthOS platform, you'd be essentially working and coding to these abstractions, and then it'll simplify a lot of, like, we'll call it the delivery of the message down to wherever it needs to go. And so as those interfaces evolve and change, we honor that interface, and so that app is future-proof from that perspective. So it's by design. So does that help? Sure. Sure. Yeah, I mean to us, it's the values in delivering the insight to a specific member, and there's more business op gain associated with that than, whatever we would pay in the transmission costs, et cetera. As far as, and maybe you can add on this.
If you're asking more specific to Health Lake, there is a different cost factors, right? One is storage, meaning you're storing the data, and then you're running, if you're running a SageMaker ML models. So if you go to the Health Lake page, there is a different cost factors are described.
No, I mean, overall in that stack, I mean, those are insignificant costs compared to some of the other expenses that we have around interoperability and, data and all of that. So, but to zoom in on Srinath's comment, I mean, the idea is if Health Lake is an encapsulation of and a simplified interface for our platform team that's building platform services to be able to essentially update and project data for a variety of use cases, and there's cost efficiencies built into that as a PaaS service, as opposed to kind of like some of the native stuff that we've strung together to achieve it pre-HealthLake, then it's a win-win from an overall total cost of ownership.
Yeah,
So,
the cost is not just not only on the healthcare services you use, also the time it takes to do a lot of those manual process, right? With the automation, which is built-in capabilities within the Health Lake, that it is like in our example we talked about, previously we were able to process the entire, it took 3 to 4 days. We made from significant progress from 3 to 4 days to a couple of hours, which is huge in terms of cost, in terms of performance, in terms of how quickly you are serving your customers.
yeah, and so just to add to that, from a business perspective, I mean, our ability to then take a record and process it through the entire chain, stream it in and run an analytic, and then send that back out, and if that can avoid a readmission, right, into an ER or whatever, then like the transaction costs on platform are insignificant compared to the healthcare costs, right? So, and if you and then you tie it together to a value-based provider arrangement, right? So now we're using tools and tech to essentially help those providers meet their contractual obligations on readmissions and whatnot. So it's a win-win across the board, and happy to pay the processing fees, et cetera. I think one more question there, or maybe, yeah, we'll start there and go to you next. We are, yeah. So currently we have care gaps going back to providers in workflow. So in the case of Epic, is as soon as a member schedules an appointment, right, it'll make a call back and say, give me the latest and greatest care gap that's available, and then we'll present that back at the point of care. So as soon as you're in the office, in the clinic, it'll pop up and you'll see the care gap, and then the provider can act on it. We're also automating prior auth. So within the EMR itself, or the electronic health record system, I should say, you're able to initiate a prior auth. So that, think of that as invoking behaviors on the client side through the interoperability layer that we have through Epic Payer Platform, and it's abstracted so that you don't have to have the specific implementation details with Epic, right? You work through the abstraction layer, and there's platform services that support that. I think we had a question here, and then we'll go back here. No, that's on the bottom. Yeah, so that's on the bottom layer. And so the idea is, before it gets into like the FHIR structure, you shouldn't care, whether it's a CCDA or a HLV2 or whatever, right? And you shouldn't care about the variety in terminology. So that's the standardization aspect of it. Now, as HealthLake evolves, right, we can rely on some of the services there, but outside of HealthLake, we work with other partners and then some in homegrown capabilities that take care of that cleansing, if you will, or curation of the data. Yeah. So go ahead.
The lady.
Sure. Yeah, so no, so there's companion apps that essentially cater to pop health, and then there's companion apps that cater to practice management systems. So the idea is that, from a business perspective, the full value chain is, I got to figure out which members you should focus on, right? And then that's kind of the pop health piece of it. And then for those that you focused on, I'm going to extend tools and data natively into your workflow, and then I'm also going to show you a scorecard that tells you how you're performing to maximize the, your reimbursement from a contract perspective. So that's that. So this platform with apps, and think of apps as kind of like rendered experiences, right, that use the platform's data sets to deliver that, and then those are in addition to some of the interoperability that uses the clinical data that we talked about. Yeah. So if we go one, or sure, go ahead. Oh, sure. Yeah. No. So do you want to talk a little bit about our security and keys and?
Yeah, basically we use CSK, customer managed key. Everything, the data within the Health Lake is encrypted both in at rest and in transit. So, and also Health Lake, one of the nice feature I want to talk about, good question you asked, when you delete the record, for example, if you're going there and deleting the record is actually not deleted, it's version. But your analyst or developer meaning wants to access, they cannot access, but the data is still there. So that way we support all the data protection like a GDPR and other compliance requirements. So we support all those things. Basically, the data is completely encrypted by default.
Yeah, and in some cases, we're physically isolating and not commingling, and so there's some nuances there that in measures that we take care of there. And no,
No.
nope. Yep, exactly.
There's a question.
Well, different parts of the architecture, right? So here's like the differentiator here isn't that this architecture is purely for clinical data that we're getting from electronic medical records. We at Anthem, our platform's all about what we call the whole person data foundation. So that consists of clinical data plus claims plus social determinants of health plus behavioral data, right? Member behavior. So all of that is input into these models, not just to tell us what the next best action is clinically, but think of like, it's one thing to say this is the recommendation that I have for the member in the clinic, but if they're supposed to go to the clinic and they have a transportation need, right, the model should be aware of that. If they're not digitally engaged and I want to try to put out a digital personalized experience, I want to take into consideration kind of how the member behaves and interacts digitally. So I combine all of that, and that makes the corpus of data that goes into the models that then are the federated insights that are fair game to then essentially send back in and or use in Pop Health and or in digital apps that are member facing or caregiver facing. So Snowflake takes care of the broader kind of data aggregation, and then we offload we delegate the responsibility of the FHIR projection and management to Health Lake. So anything you want to add?
No, yeah, that's a great point. And one example to give, for example, a lot of time patients who go for surgery, they discharge from the hospital, but those information never goes to the actual doctor, their primary physician care, right?
Mm-hmm.
With that, now we tie all the data together. It's easy to communicate those data to your providers, doctors, and everybody. So it's a question. There was one more question, right?
Say that again. So do you want to talk a little bit about that SageMaker to train our ML models? How it's
So it has, like I said, it has a built-in ML model, like an NLP models, where it has integration with ICD-10 and RxNorm, which ICD-10 is the, RxNorm is more like a pharmaceutical ontology, and ICD-10 provides you all the procedure and other ontologies, which is the industry standard. And then to users, and like I said, example, like the doctors provides prescription notes and clinical notes, all these notes, lab results, all those things, it can convert into a medical terms and then store the data in a medical format, like a FHIR format. And this helps, and also developers can easily develop custom-built models. If you wanted to build your own custom models, then you can integrate that it integrates with SageMaker. You can run your custom-built ML models on top of the data, which is stored natively in the FHIR format in Health Lake.
Yeah, so that's kind of what we're trying to explore now is like, what are the accelerators, if you will, that come with Health Lake for AI ML model development using native tools on platform, right, for AWS. So, but there are some models that we're essentially in development still, right, on readmission and some of these things for Anthem, right, that are using the same tech. So, but so far so good. I mean, it's pretty promising. So that's really what we're looking for AWS to do, is optimize their PaaS offering so that these things are viable and can streamline our AI/ML work.
Yeah,
So.
it's not just a SageMaker, right? Even Health Lake, with Health Lake, you can also integrate with Graph database, Neptune, as well as Kendra, where you can build a lot of those searchable models on top of it. And you can, there are a lot of customers we've seen started using it.
Question over here, go ahead. So next, as far as our broader platform or for Health Lake? Oh, so well, we're 5 years into building or our cloud journey, and then we're a couple years into building this platform for enabling care management and care delivery. There's a lot more that we could do in terms of additional analytics, enriching the data set with more and more data types that help us get a more kind of well-rounded perspective or a whole person perspective beyond kind of looking at the person for a member or patient in a clinical setting, right? Understanding them from a claims, from a social determinants of health, and then being able to extend and build more digital solutions, right, to members and or to providers that really maximize the utilization of benefits or help us create innovative contracts when it comes to value-based care. So we look at this as a foundational capability for us to transform our payer business or our health care business. So there's a lot more to develop, and then obviously with the partnership with Amazon and some of the other componentry that goes into that continuous evolution of those capabilities to make them cheaper, faster, more accessible. But specifically on Health Lake, I'll let you take that. And
yeah, you guys know, like Amazon, we constantly innovate. So there is no like end state of any of the services. We constantly increase and we add a lot of ML models to make it more enhanced for the future use cases as well. This is a journey we are continuing to grow and innovate.
Okay, lessons learned, I guess. So we're constantly trying to figure out what to include as far as the mapping and it's so I would say prioritize your use cases, right? So initially we were all in on this analytics and what we want to do with analytics, and now we're looking at it from and here's the framework. I'll give it to you here real quick. But if you think of like all of the different things that we want to measure providers on or collaborate with our providers on, what are the corresponding insights that are needed to do that? What are the membership or what's the member population that could benefit from that? And where are the provider connections that we need to have in place to support the delivery of those insights? And then let's pick a couple of use cases and let's pick a couple of analytics and really build out the platform services and capabilities and then scale from there, right? So a lot of times what you'll find is like this promise of there's all this data and you can do all this AI/ML, but really without getting the right data, establishing the right connections, activating the right use cases with the corresponding business process to support activating or actioning those insights, and then measuring the effectiveness of that, right? You're just going to keep spinning, right? You're never going to really make progress as far as building a true platform. So that's kind of been how we've been pivoting. So I'd say a lot more embracing, and it goes back to basics, right? Embracing agile philosophies and what's your MVP and iterating through that and getting things done that way. So anything you want to add as far as?
The additional points to add to like is a data pipeline, right?
Yeah.
One of the major lessons learned, I shouldn't say major lessons learned, it's the introduction of Health Lake, right? That reduced a lot of heavy workload, meaning heavy work lift we did on data processing or ETL processing to convert all this data into one format, into industry standard FHIR format. Now with the introduction of Health Lake, you saw that architecture diagram shifted. It reduces a lot of those maintenance and day-to-day work which you do. That heavy lifting was taken care by Health Lake. So that the customers can focus heavily on their business deliverable rather than worrying about the underlying heavy lifting work.
I think we got 5 more minutes, so we'll take one question here.
Yeah, like I said, like currently there is a lot of integration, like SageMaker. We have integration with QuickSight, and we also have integration with a lot of ML models, pre-built models, as well as we continue to evolve. Like I said, there is other integration we've seen customer using with Neptune and Kendra to do a lot of those search and analytics. So it's continually evolving. So integration always happens with multiple services. It depends on the use case. By use case, we provide, as an architect, we provide capabilities for integration with other services. But to make answer short, the possibilities are limitless.
And we're not quite done with Q&A. I think there's still a little bit more time for us outside, but we got to clear the room for the next session. So appreciate everybody coming out. And
We can still connect there. And
we'll chat some more, yeah. So, and we're here pretty much all night, so let us know.
Thank you.
Thanks.